video I want to talk about how to do topsoil placement. And the way that I'm going to show you how to do it in this is more of a post process. So here we have a corridor, and this is just called SR 112 South, and this corridor is finished. I've done all my ditching, all my special shaping, my super elevation. It's everything about this corridor is done except for I need to place topsoil. And so at this point, what I would do is I would go ahead and create a DTM from this corridor. And it's not going to be the finished DTM because we still need to add the topsoil placement. But go ahead and create a surface from this corridor. I'm just going to close this dialog because I already had created the surface and I just called it, here we're in the where we load surfaces. I just called it SR 112 South topsoil. And I'm going to load this into my preference dialog, and I loaded it as the DTM. So, I just select the DTM and just add it to the list box, and you don't have to import or nothing since it's already a DTM. Let's go ahead and look at the template that we're going to use for topsoil placement. So here's kind of the generic start point for topsoil placement, and I have two components in my template that just are going to represent. This is going to handle all the topsoil placement on the left side for my grading, and this is going to handle all the topsoil placement on my right. And these are overlay stripping components, and there's nothing particularly fancy about these. The top option is going to follow surface, the bottom option is going to follow surface. You just call this left topsoil. Make sure that you have the appropriate symbology you want to pick for earthwork, and in our case it's going to be DSN excess side slope dressing. One thing is, after you place or load your DTM, you're going to need to make sure that the overlay stripping component for the surface type here is set to that loaded DTM that you created from that corridor. So here it's SR 112S underbar topsoil, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit apply here. And I'll do that to the right side as well. And I'll save. So if we tested this, it's just going to draw in, I think I have my topsoil placement here as a foot. You just have to change that to be 8 inches, 9 inches, or whatever your case is. But you can just see it's just going to follow the surface and draw down a foot. Make sure we save. So I created two templates in here for the SR12 South, and I just called them topsoil. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in that template, the topsoil one, if I do a fit. And if we go ahead in here and look, that's all it's going to look like at first. So I'm just going to go ahead and save. Looks like I need to make some edits here. I'm going to go ahead and rename these points to be top, like for topsoil. And what I'm doing with these point names, as you can see on this one, it's called left subset TP, or topsoil, I guess. I want the left subset topsoil to be connected here, where my grading is going to start, to the left subset. So I made the name similar, so when I add some point controls, it's easier to understand and follow. Let's go ahead and change these ones. We'll do a save. I have another topsoil one here. Let's go ahead into the original and update these point names, so I want to do that. So here I'm just going to add it to another template that's part of my corridor. And you can see that we added it. And you know, at this point, that's all we're going to do. And we'll do a file save. Close. And we're going to open up the Roadway Designer. And what I've been doing is copying the corridor that we created the DTM from. So in this case, SR 112 South. I went ahead and copied that in the corridor management and called it the same name, SR 112 South Topsoil. If we open up the template drops, we'll need to resync those with the topsoil ones that we created. And you'll notice in the cross-section window, you see my topsoil. Those components, those overlay stripping components. And right now, you know, they're not really doing much. You know, if we, go through some of the stations. But you'll see this white line here, or it appears white to me, that traces our template, and that's that DTM. And that's a good way to check too if your DTMs are coming out right and stuff, is to go ahead and load them in your preferences and see how they match up in your Roadway Designer with your templates. But so now at this point, we just need to add some point controls for that topsoil component. So let's open up the point control dialog. And let's start with that left subset topsoil. And the control type is just going to be horizontal. And we want to look for a feature. So I guess the mode was horizontal, the control type is feature. And the surface that we're going to look in is the SR112S topsoil that we loaded in our preferences. And remember, when we create those DTMs, that all those features that we create in our templates for the point names, those are also in that DTM. So all I need to do is find left subset, because I want those 2 points, to follow each other. And then just check my station range, and that appears correct. Horizontal, and looks like I'm just going to go ahead and add. And you can kind of see how the component moved now. So let's go ahead and add in the other side, which was left right here, back slope topsoil feature. Pick that DTM we loaded, and here it's going to just be the exterior boundary, or the whole of that DTM, so it's pretty easy. And let's add. And you can see how that whole left side now has the topsoil placement, and so then all we have to do is do the right. We'll add that. Oops, pick the right one. Exterior boundary. Station's correct. Add. So now you can see that no matter what end condition or solutions are solving, that component or overlay stripping component is just going to look for the DTM and connect to, the left subset and the exterior boundary, or the whole. So I like doing it this way at the end, because I know I have to manage the components and the end conditions, or I just do it at the end. So it's pretty nice. So I'm going to go ahead and save here. So now you would do your final DTM, like your turn-in, or for cross sections or earthwork. So let's come up here. So now we're going to create a final surface. We'll pick this. Let's call it, in this example, we'll just call it topsoil, or we'll just call it final. surface in this. This is just a granular roadway. And I'm just going to hit apply now. So now we can cut some cross sections from that surface and see how they look. So we'll go ahead and load our existing surface. This one we have to define the symbology for. Go ahead and add that, and now we're just going to add the final surface. We called it final. We don't have to define symbology for this one. We'll go ahead and add it to this box, and now we're just going to hit draw. So you can see that here's my, all the symbology that was in my template, plus I got my topsoil placement. And it didn't matter, again, what end condition solved or anything when we target the DTM with the overlay stripping component. So at this point, you're ready for earthwork, and that final surface is complete.